a pattern called rail fence. And you can take a look at the quilt. But what we're going to do is we have horizontal blocks and we have vertical blocks. And on some of the vertical blocks, which would look like this in your quilt, we're going to substitute a fussy cut, put corners on it, and then these will become the blocks, and you can see in the quilt how it carries out the rail fence design, but we've incorporated the shape and the embroidery with it. Now when we get to the diamonds, remember we looked at the whales before? Well, this time we'll go back to our dolphins. Here we have our top shape. We cut that with a T-line. But on the sides, on the smaller pieces, we want to have smaller diamonds. And so we need to do something after we cut them to make them come out to the same size as this larger diamond. So what I've done is given you dimensions for strips. We add strips to the top and bottom of each of the smaller pieces. And then by lining up the shape, the diamond shape, with this cut edge and with this long strip, we can cut that, and that keeps our pieces with the angles accurate so they will fit together. And let's just put that back together again here. And so you can have a lot of fun with these kind of fabrics and get them all to line up. Now we have an octagon. This is our pineapple play. Remember, we started with the octagon and we're going to add strips. Well, an octagon has 8 sides, so that tells me anytime I want to line up an angle, I can go to my Star Maker 8 and line it up with the outside of the octagon and just trim the edges. Just like we did the hexagon, we used the Star Maker 6. Here we're using the Star Maker 8. And we keep adding borders until our piece is the size that we want. And then we put our quilts together, and everything works out fine because all your angles are accurate. Okay, now this time we're going to decide how we're going to layer our pieces. And we're going to start with a piece from a quilt that's called Roman Fountains. And what I need is a background square. And then I fold it and press it with an iron to give me some sharp creases, because that's how I'm going to guarantee that everything else is going to line up. And I take, in this case I'm doing raw edge, I'm taking my largest circle and I'm folding it and creasing it. Then to line it up perfectly, you don't have to do any measuring. You just line up the creases. And they'll just line up perfectly. And then you can do a straight stitch or you can do a decorative stitch. But this is a raw edge and you want it to be raw. So we're not going to come in and try and applique that with a stitch right to the edge. Again, we want to layer our pieces. We would fold them and crease them, line up the crease lines, perfectly centered, and line them up again. And that's one way that we would layer our quilt block, and we'll come back to that one in a minute. When we do some of the heart shapes, what we're going to do is line them up in the corner. Here I have a large red shape, then a black and a white, and a small red one, and they're layered. These edges were turned under with the easy under, so they're ready to just stitch using a blanket stitch on the sewing machine. Let me show you the back, and you can actually see those blanket stitches. Now we can continue to layer our things. In this case, I have an octagon, but I want it twisted. Twisted means we have a point, We have a flat edge, we have a point. We take the background and fold it and crease it, but we don't need to crease our pieces, our octagon pieces, because we're going to take the largest piece and the points are going to line up with the crease lines. So that's an easy way to do that. Then we'll take our octagon shape to center our next piece and line up the dotted lines with the creases on the background fabric. And then we can just put this piece right in here and it's perfectly centered. And then to do our next piece, we'll just put two of these back together again, lay it on top of the orange piece on point, and lay this right in here. And everything is perfectly centered. The edges are finished with the easy under, so we would use a blanket stitch. Let's look at the back again, it's easier to see. And that's how those pieces are appliqued. And let's take a look at the quilt, because when we put it all together, it looks like candy corns. And that's what it's made to be. All right, after we get our pieces layered, sometimes we want to go further and we want to cut them. And so here I have a piece where I've centered all of these. These are raw edges. This is for a quilt that is called Roman Fountains. And I've centered my pieces. You can see here I'm doing a decorative stitch. How many of you have machines with decorative stitches on them? These are great places to play with all those stitches, because every time you put a circle on and do it, use a different decorative stitch. You might find one you're really surprised with. Okay, so we get those done, and then we're going to cut this piece. And one way we can cut it is into quarters, which is exactly where the crease lines are. And when we cut it in quarters, here's a piece from the opposite color. Let's get one that goes with this piece we just did here. Yeah, we'll put those. And we can use those pieces as they are to give us your drunkard's path type patterns, or we can reassemble them in a different way. If we were to take the opposite background, the dark, and just replace every other one, we would have some of the blocks that are in the Roman fountains. Now we can also go back to this piece and we can cut it in triangles. And when we do that, we have pieces, we just go corner to corner, and we have pieces like this and like this. And then from the darker one, we have pieces like this and this. And when you start to do your cutting from this block, whether you cut in squares or in triangles, the squares all come up the same size, so you can combine them like I've done in the Roman fountain quilt. Let's take a look now at some of the fun quilts that you've seen me work on here. Let's start off with the Stars Made Simple. This is a quilt of stars, and there are no points to match. It's an easy star, and it's done based on the hexagon shape. Then we go to Springtime Hearts, and here we have two hearts layered, one fussy cut, one plain. Fun and easy to do. And then we go to the Circle Quilt, and it's made out of the pottery motifs. And take a look, we have the 8-inch circle, the fussy cut, the 6-inch and the 4-inch, and it combines into a nice quilt. Now we have a quilt called Diamonds in Motion, and we have our dolphins swimming through our tumbling blocks. Then we go on to other diamonds, the diamonds of Yellowstone, where the animals are the diamonds that we find there. And the ABC quilt, perfect quilt for that new baby in the family. We have hearts, pinwheel hearts. We have hearts in bloom. Looks like a big flower, and we have hearts made with 4 patches. With the circles, we have drunkard's path, an easy way to do it, and pond lilies. And then we have the other side of the fence where we've combined the hexagon shape with a standard rail fence. Just get out your view and do shapes, and I'm sure you can create your own original quilt. And if not, just try some of the patterns and books we have available for you. But just have fun with your quilting.